Let me tell you a story about justice, about how deep roots and stubborn hearts can outlast even the most ruthless power games. Picture this: 340 homes, zero water pressure, and at 600 a.m. on a freezing morning high in the Colorado Rockies, Dinda Blackwell is standing on my porch. Mascara streaking her cheeks like black tears, breath puffing in the gold-tinged dawn. She looks less like the queen of the HOA and more like someone who just realized the castle was built on sand. She's jabbing a finger at my chest. "You did this!" Her voice cracking in the thin air, threats tumbling out about the governor prison lawsuits. My dad's on the porch behind me in his wheelchair, watching the sun climb over the lake, the very lake she kicked him off less than a day ago. For the first time in months, his hands aren't shaking. He actually looks like the man who raised me, not the one who'd been beaten down by a stroke in small-town politics. I take a sip of coffee, let the steam rise between us. "Mrs. Blackwell, I didn't shut off anything. I closed an intake valve on my own property, a valve illegally feeding your community for 15 years. In Colorado, water rights aren't suggestions, they're the law. Let that sink in." Her face cycles through more colors than a sunset: pink, red, purple, almost gray. Her signature blue suit is rumpled, thrown on in the dark. I can almost hear her phone exploding with panicked calls from 340 households discovering that their taps had run dry. Behind her, 2 Summit County Sheriff cruisers and a black SUV with federal plates pull up. She spins, sees U.S. Army Corps of Engineers stenciled on the door, and suddenly she's not so sure of herself. "Do you know what Colorado water rights are worth, Mrs. Blackwell?" I ask, finishing my coffee. "More than the houses they serve. More than your husband's construction company. More than every favor your brother-in-law ever called in." She's speechless, which is something for a woman used to running the show. "3 weeks ago, I was nobody. Just a worn-out son driving 12 hours from Fort Collins to care for his dying father in a cabin 9,000 feet above sea level. I had no idea I was about to bring down the most powerful woman in Summit County. My family's Lake Whitfield Lake sits hidden behind the pines, 800 acres of wilderness where the mountains still remember my great-grandfather. My dad had won the land in a federal homesteading lottery back in '71, a lottery they quietly killed off a few years later. For 50 years, he fought off developers, never realizing that water, not land, was the prize. See, I'd spent the last 2 decades as a hydrological engineer for the Army Corps. I know water isn't just water. It's power, politics, and survival flowing through the same pipe. But I didn't really understand what that meant until I came home. The first time we met Dinda Blackwell, she showed up in a golf cart at 9,000 feet looking more country club than mountain. She breezed onto the porch, eyes flicking over our truck. My dad's wheelchair, my daughter Ren's muddy boots, judging us like she was the queen of Summit Ridge. "I'm Dorinda Blackwell, president of the Summit Ridge Estates Homeowners Association." Her words were sharp, each one a little ice pick. "We weren't informed of any property transfer in the area," she sniffed. "There wasn't one," I said. "This is my father's land since 1971. Federal homestead." She smiled like a cat that's already picked out which part of the bird she wants to eat. She started lecturing us on community covenants, lake usage, even glanced at my dad's wheelchair like it was a code violation. "Lake usage protocols for my own lake," I muttered. Her eyes flashed. According to her, the community had exclusive recreational rights to the lake's eastern shore thanks to a water-sharing agreement my dad supposedly signed. One word from my father: no. But Dinda, never one to back down, had documentation. The altitude must have been affecting her memory, she said, like she was rehearsing her lines for a hearing. But something in me woke up. I'd spent years cutting through bureaucratic lies. "Mrs. Blackwell, I know what water-sharing agreements look like and what forgeries look like too." Her mask slipped for just a second. "Our attorney will contact you," she sniffed. "Translation: get ready for war." Day after day, the skirmishes escalated. My dad just wanted to see the sunrise on his dock built in '74, the one he carried every plank for on his back. But the HOA claimed it was a community amenity now. If we wanted access, we had to apply, wait 60 days, pass a background check. For our own property. "Water access is a privilege in Colorado, not a right," Dinda announced, savoring every syllable. But she didn't know what my dad knew, or what I could prove. It all started to unravel when I called the county recorder's office. The clerk was whispering like she thought the phones were tapped. Turns out Mrs. Blackwell's brother-in-law is the commissioner, and any water rights adjudication goes through Judge Harlan Blackwell, her father-in-law. They've been at this for years, my dad told me. Moving boundary markers, filing false surveys, dragging me through court 6 times. Every time he'd won. But they just kept coming, wearing him down like water on stone. The stroke wasn't random, he said. It happened right after they filed their 6th lawsuit. Then came the $18,000 code enforcement letter threatening to demolish the historic cabin if we didn't submit plans for review. The kicker. The law firm's address matched the water company's. Same building, same suite, owned by Dinda's husband, who also built every inch of Summit Ridge and whose father decided all the local water disputes. A perfect circle of corruption. And then the day everything changed. Wren called panicked. I rushed back up the mountain to find my dad's wheelchair stuck in the mud, soaked and shivering. Wren had the whole thing on video. She pushed him, said he was trespassing. My dad, a Vietnam vet, a Bronze Star recipient, reduced to this. It was more than anger. It was humiliation. Something inside me snapped. I spent the night digging through my dad's locked filing cabinet. Found everything: hand-drawn surveys, water quality reports, photos of boundary markers, court documents, proof he'd beaten them at every turn, and one golden ticket, a federal water rights certificate from 1978, priority date 1889. In Colorado, that's everything. Our rights predated the entire community by over a century. But the real twist, the certificate gave us rights not just to the lake, but to the aquifer, feeding every well in Summit Ridge, 340 homes living off water stolen from our spring. They'd been siphoning it for 15 years. I made calls to old neighbors, to the Army Corps, to a forensic accountant friend. Piece by piece, the whole scheme came into focus. The HOA charged millions in maintenance fees, routed through shell companies with zero actual work done. Wells hadn't been inspected in a decade, infrastructure was failing, but the money kept rolling into the Blackwells, the commissioner, the judge. We gathered evidence: Wren hiking the land, documenting, taking photos, even finding the old Army Corps valve my dad installed in '78. Legally, I had every right to adjust it, so I did. Day 16. The sheriff showed up, ordered by Judge Blackwell, naturally claiming elder abuse because of the very incident Dinda herself caused. I confronted her on the meadow. Withdraw your complaint or I'll show everyone exactly where their water comes from. She laughed in my face. You're nobody. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I just smiled. Your community's water comes from my aquifer, priority date 1889. In 14 hours, you'll understand what that means. That evening, I turned the valve down to 30%. By morning, every tap in Summit Ridge ran dry. By sunrise, Dinda was at my door, panicked. By 8:00 a.m., the Army Corps and the EPA were pulling up in official trucks. I walked down to the meadow with my laptop and a projector, Wren recording every second. For the first time, the entire community saw the truth. Federal water rights certificates, surveys, maintenance records, shell companies, fraud, and video evidence of Dinda pushing my father toward the water. Neighbors turned on her. The authorities moved in. The indictments came down 7 weeks later. 53 counts, millions in restitution. Public officials disgraced. Blackwell Construction gone. The HOA board dissolved. 6 months later, the lake is still there. Maybe a little quieter, a little wiser. My dad's doing better, getting stronger, teaching Wren to spot water plants, just like he taught me. The new HOA president is an old water lawyer determined to do things right. Some people said I could have destroyed the community, charged whatever I wanted for water. Legally, I could have. But that was never the point. The point was proving that the truth still matters, that you can't just buy or bully your way past it forever. Water, like justice, finds its own level. You can dam it, divert it, but eventually it surfaces. Dorinda Blackwell. Last I heard, she's eligible for parole in 9 years. Her family's power is gone. The county runs with more transparency than ever, and 340 families turn on their taps every morning, getting clean water from a spring protected by a stubborn old vet who refused to let the mountains forget. So what happens when one person stands against a corrupt system, in a place where money usually wins? Well, eventually the system runs dry. Now I'm curious. What do you think? Was justice really served, or did I go too far? Where's the line between standing up for what's right and holding an entire community accountable for the sins of its leaders? Drop your thoughts or your wildest HOA story in the comments, because up here in these mountains, the land listens and sometimes justice echoes longer than memory.